Right. In case you hadn't noticed, there are new owners at Newcastle. You might have heard about it this week. The £300 million Saudi Arabian takeover ending Mike Ashley's 14-year reign. What a couple of days it's been. Those absolute scenes outside St James's Park the other night. We're, of course, very aware there is opposition to the takeover due to the Saudi Arabia human rights record. It's an issue that's been covered over the last couple of days on Sky Sports News. It will continue to be covered in the days ahead as well. But for the purpose of our conversation and for this programme, we're going to focus purely on the football side of things. And let's start with you, Lee. Could you understand the reaction of the fans, the scenes we saw on Thursday night outside the ground?
Well, yeah, totally. I mean, Newcastle are known for their fans and obviously the stature of the club, really, if you like. But you just think that this could be a massive... Well, it is going to be a massive turning point for Newcastle and to see the delight and to see what's looking like it's going to be in store for that football club, wow. I mean, when you've got owners of that calibre coming in with that sort of money, well... You know, I'm seeing all sorts, Mbappe and everyone being linked to the club, which is unbelievable. But who knows, you know? I mean, I just think that for a club of that support, I just feel that, you know, it's great to see, for obvious reasons, for them fans. But my big question mark is obviously Steve Bruce, which I just feel that I just feel like he should be given half a squeak at it because there's new owners in there. I know it's not going to happen, but... It's a fabulous football club, and I think the fans are, you know, they're well worthy of pushing on and being amongst the top flight if they're going to put that money into it.
We'll talk about what direction they'll go in on the managerial front, players in just a moment. But I just want to come to Darren. I wonder what the former Sunderland striker on the panel makes of it all. Pleased to see Newcastle become the richest club in the world, Darren?
Listen, I've got no obligations in terms of I know play for Sunderland, but I think for the Premier League, I think it's brilliant in terms of another powerhouse football club with unlimited funds. And it's going to be interesting to see what they do. I mean, you look at what's happened before in terms of the way it shaped. I know Chelsea, I think they'd finished fourth the season before Abramovich took over, so they were on the cusp. Manchester City obviously was a little bit further away, but I think when you look at Newcastle now, I think what makes it even more exciting is that they are so far away from that top four. I mean, you're looking at, it should really take them... If they didn't have the owners... You'd probably say they're closer to getting relegated than they are to getting in the top four.
Well, in the bottom three right now, aren't they?
Exactly. But all of a sudden now, when you throw 300 billion into the mix, you start thinking, who can they pick up? It's got to be the right signings. I think it's got to be marquee signings. But if you're a Newcastle United fan, I mean, you can't wait for January because you know the squad needs an overhaul. The manager is a concern. But it's just exciting times for Newcastle. And listen, you hope they get it right, but money doesn't always buy you success.
Coming back to this in just a moment, but we've got to get straight back to Sue, the Manchester derby. No goals to tell you about, but it's all going wrong for Manchester City at the moment, Sue.
It is. They're down to 10 players, Jules. Georgia Stanway's just been sent off. It's the right decision from the referee as well. It's a challenge on Leah Galton, and her studs connect with Leah Galton right on her quad, really late, endangering an opponent. The referee straight away got the red card out of her pocket. Manchester City down to 10 players, but still 0-0.
Back to the issue of Newcastle. And, Jobi, you know, it's only a few months ago that the issue of the European Super League raised its ugly head in many people's views. It was thrown out. That was hailed as a victory for football and for the fans as well over the billionaire owners. But now we see supporters outside a ground dancing in the streets at becoming the richest club in the world. I mean, how does that sit with you?
Yeah, I think certainly for Newcastle United fans, I'm glad to see it for them. You know, they have suffered. We're talking 14 real tough years. I remember playing against them actually in the Championship, you know, when they got relegated. They've had 2 relegations in that time. And a club like that, you know, given the support and the fan base, you know, shouldn't be anywhere near the Championship. So you look at the net spend, there's been a real lack of investment there. I think it's something like 10 million a season for those 14 years. And again, in the Premier League era, you know, that's peanuts. So in terms of the management situation, I have got sympathy with Steve Bruce. He's sort of trying to do a job with his hands tied behind his back at times. But we've seen in the past when these takeovers have happened, that's probably the first port of call is going to get that manager in, and then obviously the players that follow. But I think the players, going back to Bentley's point, are going to be really, really important because they are down the bottom of the table. So you go and get that marquee player that's looking at Newcastle being a contender. Are they going to have the right mentality for what they need right now? So I certainly think it's going to be a bit of a process. They've clearly come out, Amanda Slavely, and said that it will be a long-term operation there. So I think it will take a little bit of time, but for me, I'm just glad to see those fans with a bit of optimism, bit of a lot of happiness and a bit of hope, because they just haven't had that for a very, very long period.
And I bet they must wish it's January the 1st, wouldn't they? Those Newcastle fans, and the window was open. I mean, it's going to be fascinating to see what happens, isn't it, Jamie? What do you think they'll do in January, Jamie?
Well, I think I'll go back to what the guys have said there, Jules. I think that I've actually been at a club where suddenly there's more money and a bigger injection. I've actually sort of lived through it on a lower level of billionaire, but obviously still a lot of money, as it were. And I've kind of seen it go that, OK, we're getting names in, and I actually saw it in my own eyes that those names saw it as that they're getting money. And so we didn't actually necessarily buy the right character. It's all about character to get up the league. And I think that they've used the words, actually, I know it's a buzzword in football at the moment, the process, and everyone's using that. However, they've actually come out and said it's going to be process-driven, I think. And it's so important that, I think, for the club, it's not just about new signings. There's loads of things those fans up there want to address, as in getting more academy players through. I think the Longstaff brothers, bar them, there hasn't been a great deal of academy prospects come through. They want to do that, but at the same time, the fans are so excited to see a big name come in. But to attract a big name, it's impossible to be down the bottom of the league. So if they do it in 2-3 years' time, without a doubt, we see what money does. They're going to be a powerhouse, that's for sure. But it has to be done in that process.
So, you mentioned Mbappe, and maybe tongue-in-cheek, and some of the Newcastle fans, outside after the other day talking about Haaland and all these names. But from what Jamie's saying, well, maybe a couple of years' time, but not now. Do you think the same, Lee?
It can't be now, can it? I mean, you touched on it there. January is going to be an important time for Newcastle. I think this season is, again, touching on what Jamie said there, the process. It's getting it right from the top, and that's what it's all about. It's all right bringing in a manager. It's got to be the right manager that's going to fit the bill for the football club. I think that's important first and foremost. Then, when you bring in the likes of a top manager in, I think that's where you let the reins off and let him do the job, as in what players he brings in, because it's OK saying that they want to bring these big players in. It's attracting them players, and that's the thing. Newcastle aren't in a fit state to say, oh, we want Mbappe and we want Haaland, because they're not. I mean, no wins in 8. They're a club that struggled, and as Jobi said, the money hasn't been quite there. But you can't start throwing money at players, and then players in the changing room will feel aggrieved. Well, why are we not? So you've got to get that balance right in the changing room, which I feel is a massive importance. And that's why I feel if it's not going to be Steve Bruce, they've got to get the right fit for that football club, rather than concentrating on which big signings and what key signings are going to bring in, because it's got to suit the football club to go forward. And it certainly is a building plan. It's not going to happen overnight.
With being a player there now, I think, Jules, you've got to look and go, I want to be part of this project. So we're down the bottom. The players are the ones with the manager. I get it, they're down there for a reason. But if I was in that squad, I'd be going, I'm doing everything I can to stay at this football club, because I'm going to get a new deal, get in line with the next people, and we're going to be...
But realistically, with that money available now, in 2 years' time, how many of that Newcastle squad now will still be out?
Quite possibly none. But it has maybe 2. But you've got to look. But you've got to look at it, and Callum Wilson playing that exactly. But at the minute, they're still going to be there and ride that initial wave for a couple of years, where there's a much better feeling around the place, where they've played there in terrible times, so it's not been a good atmosphere.
I think what you've got to look at, and I don't want to go back to like one of my old clubs, which is Aston Villa. I think how they've done it over the past 5-6 seasons, you touched on the youth side of it. They've built that, and obviously I know the sale of Jack Grealish, which has given them that money to go and do what they're doing, but I feel that they've bought right in there, and they've slowly built a side and a squad of players that is going to take the club forward. This is what the Newcastle fans need to just take that excitement down, because give them 4 or 5 years, yes, possibly. It might come sooner. I think you touched on it. You're not going to buy a team overnight, and that's the thing. It's having all of that there, and it's giving managers a chance. It's giving all of that situation something to breathe, and the fans, for all the excitement, they have to sit down and say, right, let's see where this club's going, because it's got bags of potential, George. You know that yourself.
Do you know what? With the players that are there, though, the only thing I'd say is that they're obviously, as you said there, Jay, responsible for why the club's there at the minute. So I don't think any of them could really kind of throw their toys at the pram and go, I'm not happy about this, because they're responsible for that. But I think in January, the kind of thing for Newcastle is that they might have to go a little bit rogue in terms of some of their signings. Now, they're not going to go and get, as you said, the likes of Mbappe, Haaland. These guys are not going to come there. So they might have to go and get maybe a couple guys that maybe aren't so much dedicated on the football. Maybe it is a little bit more money-orientated, but are top players. Someone like a Coutinho, for instance, who we know has got all the ability in the world, maybe he's fallen hard at times the last couple of seasons. Icardi at PSG looks like he's surplus to requirements. That will bring the fans in. And also, them guys have got a point to prove as well. So I think that level of player is where maybe Newcastle should be looking.
I think we've seen again in the past, I think they're going to want to make a statement.
Yeah.
I think January comes, they're going to want a big signing, a big name to really help kickstart and put their name out there. You know, they're coming in, they're investing for a reason to take the club forward. And again, we've seen in the past, whether it's Robinho, lastminute.com, you know, rolling into Man City, you know, that was a real statement. And there are going to be players out there, too, great suggestions from Benty, to be fair, that have got quality.
You scouting from Benty?
He knows what agent, I think, doesn't he?
Two great shouts.
He's on a slice of commission. But yeah, I do think there'll be a real statement signing come January, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, also bearing in mind, money doesn't guarantee anything. I mean, obviously, City, within 4 years of their takeover, won the Premier League. But, you know, I need to out at Goodison Park. Jamie, Farhad Moshiri came in, spent, I think, £500 million in 5 years. Are we any further forward for it?
No, because he didn't spend right. It's always going to be at any level you look at. You speak to anyone who's in that stage of a football club, it all comes down to recruitment. It's the right person. It doesn't matter if you're... I'm watching Barrow v Leyton Orient today. This is a completely different stratosphere, but they've got to get their recruitment right. No different to Man City, have got to get their recruitment right. They didn't to start with. They got the wrong type and they didn't quite work out. It took them quite a few years. You forget that. They didn't just go, bang, start winning the Premier League. They had some signings in, didn't quite work. So it's all about recruitment. It always will be. And it's not just about straight away getting someone who doesn't fit. And that's why I touched on the people who were there already. Although they're probably not going to be there, you have got the opportunity to raise your game. And you're there. The club owners might go, I like this player. He's actually good. He's been at Newcastle a long time. It's their opportunity to raise their game. I'd be excited.
For Chelsea, they were fortunate when they got taken over by Abramovich because, as I said, they finished fourth the season before, but there's some good players there at the same time. Good Johnsons and Hasselbanks, people like that. So I know they won it in 2 years and it seems pretty quick. But the nucleus of their squad, they had good players, so they were kind of on the cusp anyway. So he just kind of injected a little bit more money, and that took them over the line. But as you said, Newcastle are so far away compared to Manchester City and Chelsea that you're not going to win the Premier League in 2 to 3 years. And Amanda Staveley said it. She said their 5 to 10 years is their plan to win the Premier League. I think it's going to be closer to 10 than to 5. I really do.
Yeah, they're 19th, so it's... Being honest, though, Lee, right now it's a case of staying in the division, isn't it?
Well, it is, and that's why I know we're saying about, you know, bringing in marquee signings. The marquee signing for me is the manager. If they're going to get rid of Brucey, they've got to bring in, because, again, where they are in the league, it's all about bringing that manager in if they are going to do so.
But if they are, who is it then?
Well, that's what they're going to have to prize someone away. I think it's going to have to be someone. I mean, I see Brendan Rodgers was linked to it. You know,
Steven Gerrard's favourite.
Gerrard. I mean, is it a big step?
It's a bit of a gamble, that as well.
Well, that's what I mean. I think if they're going to go for someone, it's going to have to be someone who's been there, done it, and is going to attract players, because they're not going to attract players at this current time. A manager in there of a big status, I think they'll attract players.
Mark Hughes got 6 months or so, didn't he, when he was at Manchester City after the takeover, but everything you hear suggests that Steve Bruce will not be afforded that sort of time.